Welcome back. All right, the Department of Player Safety actually came out yesterday and tried to clarify what they have suspended when it comes to hits to the head and what they haven't. And so we'll discuss that today, and then just for something free just to throw in, we'll talk about goalie interference too, because these are the two things that it feels like we see the most controversy around on any given night is hits to the head and goalie interference calls and whether or not they're overturned and all that fun stuff. And I'll get into it because I do feel like there's been a bit of slippage when it comes to the rule, and so we'll talk about goalie interference. But we're going to start off with the illegal hit to the head. So it's Rule 48, illegal checks to the head, a hit resulting in contact with an opponent's head where the head was the main point of contact. I believe it used to say primary, and such contact was avoidable is not permitted. Now, in 2013, they changed that to main point of contact. That's most of the energy is absorbed by the head on the hit, which I guess that's one way to call it. That's one way to decide whether or not it's a suspendable hit or not. Jeannot, the hit where he was suspended, it was deemed that most of the um, energy was absorbed by Brock Besser's head, most if not all. The Reeves hit on Darnell Nurse, same thing. It was deemed that Ryan Reeves had thrown a hit where primary point of contact's the head. That's where most of the energy is absorbed by Darnell Nurse. Now, the White Cloud hit on Nyes, they deemed that A, he didn't leave his feet until the point of contact, and B, that the hit is absorbed mainly by the body of Nyes. The one issue, and just the one thing that I do wonder is, but do we have any actual science that says that Matthew Nyes' head didn't absorb a lot of that energy? And I don't know that we do, and I think it's maybe a gray area of sorts in there because you're trying to say, okay, well, the force here was mostly to the head, the force there wasn't. But then not all hits are created equal. So a hit might be a heck of a lot more force, a lot more oomph behind it, where it's legal, whereas one that's not legal may have less oomph behind it. And so what this creates is a scenario where a hit that we deem to be dirty enough that Department of Player Safety says, yeah, that's going to be a suspension, might see the guy who gets the hit to the head actually get up and skate off and he's okay. And then the legal hit, you could see the player down and out and end up concussed on the play, which we've seen. And obviously, when a player's hurt, that fan base is going to be kind of riled up and angry. And I understand that completely. There's nothing worse than, I guess there could be some things that are worse, but one of the worst things in hockey is when your team's going along, everything's going really well, and then one of your best players or your best players out as a result of a hit that you don't like, and players on the team don't like, and the coach doesn't like, but the NHL comes out and goes, "That's legal. Not much we can do. It's a legal hit." So the White Cloud one's deemed legal, and I do wonder if there's going to be a point where the NHL revisits this. Keep in mind that when asked, Gary Bettman said under oath, you can't take head hitting out of hockey because he was brought before Parliament in Canada and he said head hits aren't going to be taken. You can't take head hits out of the game. Is basically what Bettman said, that because of the game being played fast, these guys are really big. There's going to be hits where the head is contacted, and there's just that's the nature of the beast. Now, one thing that they say they look at from Department of Player Safety side of things is poor timing and the angle of the hit is considered, which I understand. And initially on the one play, it looked like White Cloud had kind of broadsided Nyes, but there's another angle that shows that it was more of a direct head-to-head kind of way of doing it, and that yeah, it was delivered in a way that people who don't like the hit still aren't going to like it, but people who want to defend the hit can find something there to defend it, as Department of Player Safety did. And there are definitely a lot of players and coaches and former players and coaches who would say that's a legal hit. You can't take that out. Now, the head contact on Nyes is also considered unavoidable, which to me that's kind of a little bit of a gray area where at that speed you're telling a player you could have avoided this contact or you couldn't. And if I was putting together a rule book, I wouldn't have any gray area for that at all. It would be this is a suspension. This is going to get looked at. This won't. and just make it really, really clear. Because when you have that room for a gray area, it also opens up Department of Player Safety in the league to accusations of playing favorites, to accusations of not calling it evenly. So I think just to set standard and not having the gray area and the opinion part would be better. I don't think they're going to, and I know people will disagree with me on that. Also considered force, predatory nature, injury, and history are all considered. So the history of the player. Have they been suspended before? Is there an injury on the play? Predatory nature. Were they out hunting for this guy? Is it somebody they had problems with prior in the game maybe? And the force of the hit. So that's where I've said sometimes it's a really, really heavy hit and the guy gets hurt, but it's considered to be a legal hit. Other times it's an illegal hit and the player's not hurt. Which is why when people say, well, they should be suspended for as long as the player is injured, right, but there are suspendable plays where a player isn't injured on the play. So we don't want to open ourselves necessarily. And I've seen people say, oh, no, it's way simpler than that. And then they come up with a way that's not necessarily all that much simpler. So I don't think we're ever going to see the checks to the head come out of the game. I know there are fans that would like to see them come out of the game. I know that for people that understand head trauma, CTE, and concussions, but this is where I'll point out too, the NHL does not acknowledge there is a link between CTE and playing in the National Hockey League, and that repeated blows to the head in the National Hockey League they don't think will lead to any kind of CTE. So yeah, that's where we're at with the National Hockey League on that topic. And you guys can let me know your thoughts as to should there be something done about head hits in the game? Are they just a part of the game? Let me know your thoughts about that in the comment section. Again, for me personally, I would just try to get out any gray area. Anything that makes them go, well, I mean, I guess that, well, from this thing, it should be cut and dry. It should be, you know what? This hit doesn't look that bad. However, if you look at the result and if you look at what the rule says, it's black and white. There's no gray area. Now, the gray area in goalie interference seems to be starting to crop up. So there was an article 3 years ago from Down Goes Brown on The Athletic, and I've mentioned it many times over because it really does get into here's what goalie interference is, here's what goalie interference isn't, and I've used that in my brain since then, and it has done a pretty good job of telling me when they're doing the replays whether it's going to count or not. And there's times where they challenge and I go, yeah, that's coming back. Or they challenge and I go, I don't think that one's goalie interference. And when the article came out, I was pretty close to 100%. But recently, that percentage has dropped. And I don't know that they're calling it differently. But there is a gray area, and there's an article that's out now talking about, hey, there's a gray area that shouldn't be there, and I agree. So, Rule 69. It's a funny number, isn't it? It is. I just have to pause a bit. Goalie interference. So the rule states, goals should be disallowed only when 1. An attacking player, either by his positioning or by contact, impairs the goalie's ability to move freely within his crease or defend his goal. Fair. Or 2, an attacking player initiates intentional or deliberate contact with a goalkeeper inside or outside the crease. When it's outside the crease, that's a tough one because there are times where a player, an attacking player is in front of the crease, the goalie kind of comes out and initiates that contact, and it's like, okay, well, the goalie initiated the contact there. The player's allowed to be on that part of the ice. So if the player then turns around and kind of bumps the goalie, obviously it's going to come back as goalie interference. Now, there's 2 recent examples that the article talks about. Brandon Tanev had a goal that counted versus the Islanders for Seattle. He bumped Sorokin in the crease. He went in there on his own. He nudged the goaltender. It wasn't a lot, but I do think it was enough to distract Sorokin. I mean, if a goaltender's getting ready to make a save and he feels a bump on his arm, your natural instinct is to look in the direction of somebody making contact with you. At least I would think that. Your natural instinct is somebody's in my, what are you doing? And it is a split second between that contact and the puck going in the net. And they also deem that, well, it wasn't enough contact to cause that goal to go in. And that's the gray area with the goalie interference rule that I think needs to go away. I think either it is or it isn't goalie interference, and it shouldn't be, well, he kind of interferes, but I don't think the goalie was going to save it. I no. And then there was a John Carlson goal that didn't count against the Leafs due to Nick Dowd bumping Wool. So that goal came off the board, and John Carlson wasn't happy about it. And I'm not disagreeing with him on this one, because and the article makes the statement of, if Nick Dowd caused enough of a distraction that Wool can't make a save, then why is it Sorokin can make the save when Brandon Tanev's in the crease doing a very similar thing? In one case, it's a bump on the arm, and in the other, it's a bump on like the blocker. But either way, you're distracting the goaltender. You're not letting him make the save. I think there is a simpler way to do this. Any contact on a goalie inside the crease within a certain time frame, you could assign 3 seconds. You could assign 5 seconds. If an attacking player attacks, or if an attacking player initiates contact with the goaltender within a certain period of time of a goal being scored, then that goal should or shouldn't count based on the amount of time the goaltender has to reset. Because that's supposed to be part of the rule too. Does the goaltender have time to reset? And I don't know that I've heard that one this year. And we used to hear there was contact, but it was deemed the goaltender had time to reset. I haven't heard that one. I'm not saying that the referees haven't been saying it. I'm not accusing anybody of just throwing that verbiage aside, but I haven't really heard that one. So I understand why players are frustrated, and NHL players coming out and saying they're getting frustrated. Mostly with these two rules, it seems that they get frustrated on what is or isn't. So taking out a gray area is very, very important. Any contact in the crease within a certain amount of time frame. And not only that, but offside reviews. If the team has been in the attacking zone for more than 30 seconds, does the offside really matter? So that would probably help a little bit when it comes to the amount of time we're losing to offside reviews, especially when it's a fraction of, just let it go. If it's more than 30 seconds, then forget it. And I've watched games in other leagues where they don't necessarily have offside review, and it's not a huge deal. We don't freak out with, hey, that looks offside there. Although there was a game last night where there was a clear play where it was offside, and I was like, I'm not even writing notes on the board because this is so offside. And then it got cleared. I think it was the Rangers Flames game where the Rangers were clearly offside. So I wasn't writing anything. I'm like, no, forget it. They're offside. They're crazy. But it is a fast game. I understand that for linesmen, it is very difficult to be able to make that call right every single time. And I understand too that for referees, these rules having gray areas can make things very difficult. And then the best part for the refs is the goal interference, you're calling Toronto, and the situation room's telling you, yep, good goal, or nope, bad goal. Illegal checks to the head can be the same thing. You're calling into Toronto, and they're telling you, yep, good call, nope, that's not a penalty, or that's not a goal. And then you get to go out and tell the crowd what they decided, and the crowd turns against you. You are now the lightning rod for what has taken place, what has transpired, rather than the Department of Player Safety showing up on the big screen over the ice and going, okay, here's why it wasn't a goal, or here's why it was. And even make it like a Q&A, give them like a minute and a half. I'm kidding. But I don't think there should be that judgment call to a rule. I think either it is a penalty or it's not a penalty. It is a goal or it's not a goal based on this criteria we have set. For goalie interference, it should be simple. Did the player go into the crease on his own, the attacking player? Yes. Okay, he needs to get out. Did he contact the goaltender? Yes. Was it within a certain period of time that a goal is scored? Yes. Then it's no goal. And that's it. And I'm saying any contact, because the idea that, well, that's not enough, which is what was told to Patrick Waugh when that Tanev goal counted, that's the wrong answer. It's not enough interference. What? That's just, it's either interference or it's not. You know, you don't see a police officer going, well, I let him go. It was a DUI, but I don't know, he seemed all right. So, I don't know, his house is just over there. It's probably fine. No, rules are rules, laws are laws, and when it comes to sports, just make it black and white. Just make it simple. Make it so that everybody understands. And I think the best way to do this would be to have the NHLPA and the NHL sit down and review rules that are not in dispute, but rules that players are confused by. Rules that players are saying, okay, this isn't necessarily being called consistently. And you could have a panel. You could have 3 players and 3 officials, or maybe a GM, people on a panel where they would convene, say, once a month via Zoom, and just talk things over and have an official there. One storyline that's interesting out of Philadelphia is the idea that John Tortorella sits down with Matvey Michkov once a week to talk things over and make sure things are okay. I think the NHL could do that with the rules as well. And you could have players, and then those players would be known by others as to, okay, this is the guy that we would report to. Maybe you have one player designated per team, and then certain players would show up to a meeting to say, look, there was a goal that counted. Can we get some clarification on what is or isn't going to be counted? I need something to take back to the guys and talk to them so we know what the rule is and isn't. And just having that clarity between the league and the players would go a long way. And it'd be a heck of a lot better an idea than finding the players or coaches or anybody else for speaking out and saying, we don't know what the hell's going on. So we'll see what happens with that for the rest of this season. But it is only a matter of time before there's a playoff game that's going to come down to something that happens here, and we're discussing it again. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How would you solve the whole goalie interference issue? How would you solve the head hits, or would you just say all head hits are illegal, or it's fine, it's a free for all, let them do whatever they want? There's definitely some that I think would approve of just let them do whatever they want. Don't worry about it. They'll police themselves. Dangerous message, but I get the idea. I just don't necessarily agree with it. But hey, let me know your thoughts in the comments section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.